Well, let me let you into a little secret. Hello and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now, back in 2021 I filmed a brief review of the Arteon R shooting brake at Millbrook Proving Ground, and I liked it a lot, but I promptly forgot all about it because there was a shortage of semiconductors, which meant fewer new cars were being built, and therefore there was very little chance of a chunky discount off the, I would say, optimistic £52,000 asking price. That was back then. Today the Arteon R shooting brake starts at £60,000. And yet, it's better value today than ever before. How can that be? I hear you say. Well, I will reveal all at the end of the video. Before that, though, I want to give you the most accurate and thorough review of the Arteon R shooting brake so far. We're going to go through the £7,000 worth of options on this one. We're going to have a full tour of the outside and the inside. Then we're going to have a spirited drive to see if it performs like an R should do. But firstly, let's see how it performs on paper R. Okay, so the Arteon R shooting brake today costs £60,330 with no options, but it's got a pretty good standard spec, as I'll show you later. Under the bonnet, we've got the same EA AAA Evo 4 4-cylinder petrol turbo engine as the Golf R. It produces the same 320 horsepower and 420 newton meters of torque, and that torque is produced at exactly the same rev band as in the hatchback. Often manufacturers will retune the engine to suit a bigger, heavier car, but in this case it's exactly the same. 0 to 62 time is a bit slower though, 4.9 seconds, which is the same as the Golf R Estate, and it does have launch control. Top speed is restricted to 155 miles per hour. The combined MPG is 31.8, which, having driven it for a few days now, I'd say is pretty realistic. And the weight, this is a bit of an issue, 1,783 kilograms. That's 230 kilograms more than the R Hatch and 160 kilograms more than the 8R Estate. It's 22 centimeters longer than the Golf Estate. It's 8 centimeters wider than the Golf Estate, which will be the same as the Hatch. Interestingly, it's 2.5 centimeters lower due to its sleek roofline, and it's 16 centimeters longer between the wheels, the wheelbase, which is massive, and that explains the class-leading rear passenger legroom. Now, let's look at the £7,000 worth of options on this Arteon R shooting brake. Now, to be exact, this Arteon R shooting brake actually has £7,355 worth of factory options, making it £67,685 on the road, according to Volkswagen's price list on the 15th of November 2023. This includes £1,565 of first-year road tax, something to consider if you're buying a nearly new one, because if it's 6 months old and you want 6 months road tax when you collect it, it's going to cost you close to £800. This car's in lapis blue, which is £1,235 extra. Moonstone grey is a standard free colour. It's got 20-inch estrial wheels, £655. It's got Pro Navigation, £1,620. It's got the LED Matrix IQ headlights for £1,460. It's got the tow bar for £995. It's got a climate windscreen, which is £415. It's got the Assistance Plus back for £365, which gives you area view, park assist, self-parking, and blind spot warning in the door mirror casings. It's got the head-up display for £610. It's worth pointing out there are no interior options that can be spec'd. It is what it is, and the standard spec is pretty good. You get the panoramic glass sunroof, you get keyless entry and go, you get heated Napa leather seats with memory function massage for the driver and easy entry, and also you get the very important DCC dynamic chassis control as standard. Now, I've always been a big fan of the Arteon. I went to the original press launch in Germany in 2017, and it was actually the first new car that I ever filmed. I'll put a link to that video in the description of this one. I came back to the UK thinking, well, you know, maybe I'll own one day, but there's no model that I particularly fancy. Then when we got the facelift in 2020, we got the shooting brake, and I thought, I can't believe they've actually made that. All we need now is an R model. And then a year later, we got the Arteon R shooting brake. You could say it's the perfect car for a mature enthusiast like me, but then we have the issue of the price, £52,000 at launch, and it launched into a world where not many new cars were being built, so discounts weren't out there. But today, it's a very different world, as I'll explain later, and I'm sorely tempted to buy one of these. Now, before we look at the exterior design, I just want to talk about the key. It's different to Golf 7.5 and Golf 8. It's nice and reassuringly well made, but it's also quite slimline, which is handy because this is a keyless car. Keyless is standard. Right, colours. This is obviously in lapis blue, the signature colour. We've also got white and black, silver and grey, and the white isn't pure white, it's oryx white, which is the pearl effect, so a little bit more upmarket. We have a really big grille on the Arteon. It's always had that. I think it's to try and align it with the Touareg, so it's kind of like a partner car to that in the range and move it away from being like a big Golf, even though it's on the MQB platform and is effectively a big Golf. We've got these big air intakes down here that both got radiators in them, so they do a job. And it is a mean looking car with that eyebrow, monobrow there. It's the kind of thing we used to fit to Mark IIs and Mark Is back in the day to give that bad boy look. Got a big clamshell bonnet as well, which looks sort of very Audi-ish, very Audi A5. The headlights are covered over with these LEDs, and they look very sort of slimline, low profile, again adding to the mean look. Now this car's got the LED matrix headlights, quite an expensive option, and with those you get the light bar, which a lot of people don't like. Even with the standard lights are LED and you get auto main beam, you just lose the light bar and the matrix bit. How different that is on the road, I don't know, probably not an awful lot. I'd always expect LED matrix if I was ordering the car new, but if you find one on the market without those, I wouldn't worry too much. For me, auto main beam is the most important thing because most modern headlights are pretty good, up GTI excluded. We've got the R badge here, which is, I think, pretty much identical to that on the R line. Again, another reason to go for lapis blue. It makes it stand out compared to the R line. We've got the camera for the 3D view option on this car. I'll show you later. Number plates. If you're wondering why it's got R50, this plate was originally on the Touareg R50, which was a model that was out over 10 years ago. And Volkswagen UK have kept this and put it on loads of R models in the meantime, so it's quite a famous plate. So this car's got the climate windscreen, not a particularly expensive option, and it doesn't have elements in it, by the way, like the Ford version has. It's got a film in it, so you don't see any difference as a driver with this screen compared to the normal screen. As well as demisting and defrosting, it also works in the summer because it reflects heat, and the car can be up to 15 degrees cooler in there, which means that the air conditioning works more effectively as well. So it works all year round, really kind of the option you ought to have. Right, wheels, tyres, brakes, lot to talk about here. So the standard wheels are the 19-inch Adelaides. These are the 20-inch Estorils, a relatively cheap upgrade at 600 and something pounds, and I think quite important. For some reason, the Adelaides don't really suit it. It doesn't look very sporty. It looks more like an R-line. Both wheels are 8 inches wide. You just get more tyre and less wheel if you go for the Adelaides over these. And when I say more tyre, I just mean the sidewall. The width is the same on 19s and 18s, 245. We've got 35 profile on these. On the Adelaides, it's 40, so you have a little bit more cushioning in the tyre sidewall. The tyres are self-sealing, which is something I wasn't aware of before, but Pirelli have manufactured this tyre with a mastic film inside it that stops objects penetrating the tyre, which is really, really cool. It's important to point out they're not run flats. Run flats are awful tyres with very stiff sidewalls that make otherwise good driving cars drive really badly. So no, this feels like a normal tyre on the road. It just doesn't get punctured as easily. Now, let's talk about the brakes. So we've got 357mm brakes, identical to the Golf R hatchback, 2-piece discs as well. Nothing's changed there, even though this car's significantly heavier. I'm sure they're pretty fine on the road. And is anyone ever going to take this on track? Well, I'd love to, but yeah, I think that you might need more brakes if you did that, because it is about 1,800 kilograms. But yeah, for the road, perfectly fine. They're nice and blue, and they've got the R logo on them. Lovely. We've got the R logo on this bit of trim here, which looks, I think, like the R line. What the R line doesn't get, the matte chrome mirrors. That's unique to the R. I'm not so keen on all this bright work, though. I'd love to see a car with carbon mirrors and everything de-chromed, and I think it would look pretty amazing. All Arteons are very well sculpted down the side of it. They have a very muscular rear haunch, but I think it works even better with the shooting brake roofline. So you've got a very, very sleek roofline that comes down a lot. When I saw preview pics of this, I didn't think they'd make it, but I was amazed that they did, and it looks like a concept car on the road to me. The only way it could be improved, I think, is if you lower the ride height. Even though it's 20mm lower than a standard Arteon, the R still sits really high. This lawn's not that flat though, so maybe not that bad on a level surface. Now at the back we've got these LED lights that came with the facelift that look really sort of modern and high tech. We've got a sort of integrated little spoiler into the metalwork of the tailgate. We've got the folded paperclip R badge, of course, and the boots opened with the Volkswagen logo. The bumper is pretty nice, actually. It's got red reflectors integrated into it. We don't have much of a diffuser, though, and that's primarily because the Arteon has got a tow bar that can be factory spec that pops out in this gap here, which isn't very good for diffusers, so that's a bit of a shame. Having said that, we've got 4 exhaust pipes, and they're sort of trapezoidal ones, which are different to the R hatchback, and they look really cool. And importantly, they're genuine exhaust pipes connected on both sides. They're just really clean because of the OPF fitted to this car. And when you put it into race mode, it does sound pretty different, so I'll demonstrate that later. Right, now let's have a quick look at the sunroof. Standard on the Arteon R shooting brake, I couldn't really believe it, is panoramic glass sunroof. So there's a panel under this panel, and you can obviously tilt it, you don't have to have it fully opened, and there's a blind as well, so you can retract that all the way and get a bit more light in the cabin. Very, very nice and standard, but then at 60k, I guess you expect some niceties. Right, now let's have a look inside. Okay, first thing you notice are the frameless windows, which drop down a few mil to clear the door seal. Not necessarily a recipe for a refinement at high speed, but we'll talk about that later. Now, standing here, it all looks pretty good. It's only when you really get down and look at the details you realise, yeah, it could be better. I've got a thing about carpets, and this kind of quality carpet should not be in a Golf, let alone a 68k Arteon, so that's really disappointing. The floor mat's a little bit better with its blue piping and stitch and our logo, but it doesn't really make up for that. We've got stainless pedals with a plastic dead pedal. The door card, again, it's disappointing when you look closely. So this is pretty nasty plastic, and this really should be a bit more padded. But we've got chrome tips on the switches. We've got, although not that switch, the boot opener, little chrome trim there, which livens things up a bit. Carbon here, which does look quite nice. And then we've got this ambient lighting here, which can be changed to one of 30 colours. And then we've got this metal inlay, which does go across the dash. That's quite nice, with this aluminium trim as well that follows it across there. Lots of exposed paint here, which is not so good. Nice trim there, though it's not illuminated because we've got the ambient lighting as well as the R logo being beamed onto the ground by the mirror. The seats are definitely worth a mention, though. These are standard on the Arteon R. It's like a 2,800 option on the Golf, I think. Nappa leather, really nice quality. R logo stitched in there. Bit of a bright blue bit on the back, not so good, I suppose. But yeah, really nice seats. Adjustable thigh support like that. And we've got full electric adjustment, lumbar up and down, memory function and massage function. Do not press that while you're driving because it's quite weird. But the lumbar support basically goes up and down, massages your back. Very, very cool. But only on the driver's side, which is very disappointing because the passenger seat's got full electric adjustment as well. It can't be really that hard to put that function over there. The other little trick they do, which is proven quite hard to demonstrate, as you can see, it's right on the back of its runners, and that's because it's got there's a convenience entry function which you can turn on and off, because I think rear seat passengers may not like it so much. But when you open the door and get out of the car, the seat moves backwards to give you more clearance. Because if you look here, this is quite restrictive. Really, an A-pillars normally sort of stop here, so that's kind of useful for tall people in particular. Then when you get in the car and turn the ignition on, the seat will move to your driving position, which you'll know from the memory that's programmed into the key. Okay, let's get in and have a good look at the cockpit. So if you're a Golf 8R owner, you'll be pretty familiar with the steering wheel. It's the same one, identical. It's got the haptic buttons, which you do get used to, but they're never really that perfect. We've got the bigger paddles compared to, say, the GTIs or the lower spec Arteons. And they've actually got quite a nice action to them, but they are plastic and they're kind of shaped at the back there, which is really nice. Fitted them to my GTI Club Sport Mark 8, best mod I ever did. These buttons can be operated by mistake, especially when you're new to the car. This one really bugs me though, because this is the one you hit most often for the heated steering wheel, which is standard, by the way. Very nice. On Porsches, there's a little switch here that is so good, and you never do it by mistake. And Volkswagen must have thought it just cost too much to put it there, so we'll leave it there. But really, you could just have it here. The little R logo there could be a little switch you just press up and down. Anyway, instrument cluster, I think it's pretty much identical to that in Golf 8. You can obviously play around with it because it's a digital instrument cluster, but you can't really beat the gauges. I don't think it's really good enough for this car because it looks a bit, I don't know, normal. This is meant to be a special car. In Passats of the past, you used to get more dials when we had traditional dials, and they could have made these digital dials giving you a bigger instrument cluster, and it would look more in keeping with the rest of the car. This just looks like I'm in a, I don't know, a T-Roc or something. Infotainment-wise, well, this car has got the upgraded Pro Nav, and honestly, do not waste your money. The only real benefit it gives you is wireless charging, which is generally quite unreliable anyway. I haven't tried it. But what you lose are the two knobs, and as you can see, the home and menu buttons, which are really important, I can't reach them. This seat is a bit further back than it should be, but yeah, there's still a bit of a stretch. If you have the normal system, yes, the screen's a tiny bit smaller, but you have buttons here as well. So really, you're not gaining an awful lot, and it's quite a lot of money you could spend elsewhere. This is the facelift Arteon, of course. The range was changed in late 2020, and they ditched the Mark 7.5 type heater controls and gave you these ones, which, well, they're better than they're not being there at all, like they are on Golf 8, but they're still touch sensitive, so they won't please everybody. But if you like doing this, sliding up and down, then, well, you can't do that with the old ones. And you can also stab it like a madman as well if you want to do that, but I do miss the tactile. I'm not actually sure if that's haptic or whether it's just loose in the... Interesting one, that. Got a traditional shifter, not the stubby one off Golf 8. This is basically the old Arteon down here with the old switches that just like Golf 7, 7.5. We've got extra ones here because we've got the assistance pack, which gives you the bird's eye view, which works with the rear view camera when you're reversing. So rear view camera, front and rear sensors are standard. I was a bit not too fussed about the bird's eye view until I parked in a bay with white lines, and you can actually get it perfect using this. Much easier than, well, it's all in your blind. You can't actually see down there, but with this you can. So actually, and it's not that expensive. It's probably quite nice to have, to be honest. Keyless car. Cup holders there, electric parking brake, which is pretty hard to fault now. We have USB-Cs, 2 in there. We have the head-up display, so this you could quite easily ignore. On a lot of cars, it just works. On this one, you have to turn it on, so there's a knob here. Doesn't really make it very clear what it is. And just zoom in. Traditional headlight switch as well, unlike Golf 8, which is quite nice as well. So if we press that, you get this little bit of perspex and things displayed onto it. And you can adjust the height of it. There you go. A nice little touch with the Arteon is that we've got proper tyre pressure monitoring using sensors in the wheels, not just via the ABS system, so it's a lot more accurate, and we've got a display on the cluster there. You can also have it on the infotainment system. We've got driving modes, of course, 4 different ones operated by this button on the center console, just like in Golf. And you can also select them like this. But on this R model, this little blue thing here, it's not just a little trim, it actually does a job. This lets you select the modes. If you're very gentle, you can go through them one by one. But if you're at the traffic lights, for example, and you really want race mode, just quickly press it and you're in race mode straight away. Let's have a look at the standard pan roof from the inside then. So you've got this fixed glass panel here. This sits on there when it's open. you can tilt it up like that, and there's a blind as well, like that. Okay, now I will very carefully put the seat in my driving position, and we'll get in the back and have a look at what it's like to be a passenger in there. Now, in some keyless entry cars, the back doors won't actually unlock the car, but on the Arteon, I'm pleased to report they do. Now, Volkswagen have a habit of reducing the quality of the rear door cards, and at first glance they look identical to the fronts. We've got the ambient lighting, we've got the carbon, we've got the padded armrest, we've got the aluminium here, but we don't have the stitch across the top. Now, I'm not sure if that's just the design of the capping not sort of lending itself to that, or whether it's just the accountant saving money. I will let you decide. In here, though, it still looks pretty plush. We've got the Napa leather, blue stitch, carbon on the headrests. Nice. Quite a lot of leg room. Still got the blue on the floor mats. And, you know, it's not too bad. Headroom itself for me at 6 foot is okay. I can't see the sky though because the roof line's so low. But I can always look out of the sunroof because the blind is retracted, which does lighten up the interior a lot. So knee room, pretty damn good. I wouldn't want any more than that. I'd be quite happy in here. What helps as well is that there's a lot of gap between the seats, which, you know, if you're in smaller cars, these are a lot closer together. It feels a lot more claustrophobic in the back. Strangely enough, you notice the rake of the windscreen a lot more sitting here. It really is leaning back an awful lot. But that's part of the sleek design. So you can definitely get 2 adults in the front, 2 in the back, but another one in the middle here is not possible. And I think maybe it's because we've got the 4-wheel drive prop shaft down here that this is higher. There's no real reason why this should be higher. But we do have a sort of transmission tunnel, which was more common on rear-wheel drive cars. But I guess because we've got 4-wheel drive, it's just the same bit of hardware down there. So yeah, this isn't great. I'm 6 foot and I'm rubbing on the headliner, and I'm pretty sure the sunroof won't help matters as well. So we've got a low roofline car with a sunroof, which takes away, must be a bit of headroom from here because we've got the mechanism for the blind sat in here. So yeah, 3 adults in the back, not so good. 2 adults and a child, perfectly fine. Right now, let's have a look in the boot, which is quite important with a shooting brake, whatever that may be. Now, there is a saying in showbiz that says don't work with children or animals, and in YouTube there's probably a saying that says do not work with boots that open by kicking under the bumper. But actually this time it's worked. So this car has got that function. As long as you've got the key on you, it does that, and I think that's pretty damn cool. It's also got another little trick up its sleeve. For 900 or something pounds, we've got this tow bar that pops out like so. Yeah, well, I'm sure you're not really that interested in that. And then we have the boot. So this car is really an example of style over function. It's got actually a smaller boot than the Golf R Estate, with the seats up or down. And actually it's pretty much the same boot as in the Arteon Fastback, the normal version, not the shooting brake. So, hey, it looks great though, doesn't it? But yeah, you don't really buy this car for its boot space. I mean, it's still big. That's why they could probably get away with it, but it's no bigger than the Fastback. Does it look better? Definitely. Does it cost a bit more? Well, only a bit. I think it's under £1,000 to go from Arteon R Fastback to Arteon R shooting brake, which is a bloody bargain in my eyes. Oh, and there is another trick. When I find the key, you can close it on with the key. There is a button there, but you can't lock it with that, unlike on some cars, so it's just closed. But on this, if you hold this down, does it lock the rest of the car? Maybe not, but we can fix that. Okay, now let's have a look under the bonnet. Okay, in this pretty generous engine bay, we have exactly the same Evo 4 EA 888 4-cylinder petrol turbo engine as the Mark 8 Golf R. It's got the same unfortunate DNF engine code. It's got the same 320 metric horsepower, same 420 newton meters of torque produced at the same point in the rev band. So it is the same, which I find a little bit disappointing. And that ties in with the fact this car was originally destined to have a turboed VR6 engine. Now, some people have said this car was going to get the RS4 engine, but that would really take a lot of re-engineering because that's a longitudinal installation. This is an MQB platform car and the engine is located transversely. So whether it has enough power to justify the badge, well, there's only one way to find out. Let's go for a drive in the Arteon R shooting brake. Well, I thought I'd start the driving bit of this video on the motorway because let's face it, that's where most Arteons will spend most of the time. We're in comfort mode now, which is super comfy. If it's not comfy enough, go into DCC via individual mode. They're actually 2 calibrations softer than comfort mode. Now, it's probably a bit too soft for the motorway. You'd be okay for sport, but it does mop up most of the imperfections on a British B road very, very nicely. It's not a stiff this at all with its standard DCC. But there is one caveat: when the road becomes really rough or moderate and worse, then it can get a little bit crashy, but that's fine because that's quite a rare thing. When we've got the car in comfort mode, we've got the engine and gearbox in eco mode, and that means when you come off the gas, the car coasts, which is really good for saving fuel, as is the 7-speed DSG. It's a very snappy gear shift when you're in the mood for fun, which I'll show you later, or when you're just wafting like I am now. It's super smooth, and the 7th gear is nice and tall because we're doing about 2,100 RPM at 70 miles an hour. We've got the standard ACC, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have used. It's been in Golf 7 since 2012. And it works really well. On this car though, it's linked to traffic sign recognition, which I've not been a big fan of because I've had a few issues with it on my Mark 8 Golf GTI Club Sport. It might be better now, but if it was my car, I'd just turn it off. What's nice though is that you can go up and down the cruise control speed by 5 miles an hour or 1 mile an hour increments using the buttons on the haptic steering wheel. As you can hear, we're doing 70 and it's quite a refined car. There's very little wind noise, which is surprising considering we've got frameless windows. But there is a bit of tyre noise. If it's not refined enough for you though, spec the £350 optional acoustic pack, and that gives you laminated side windows and a bit more soundproofing. Right, now we've done the boring bit, I think it's time to test out the launch control function. Well guys, the good news is it's really easy to operate launch control. So you just need to have ESC in sport, you need to be in race mode, you need to be in auto mode on the gearbox, and then just put your left foot on the brake and go for the throttle. It's a little bit slippery today, so let's hope this works okay. Here we go. Not the cleanest of launches, but it still felt like 0 to 62 in 4.9 seconds, which, let's face it, isn't bad for a 1.8 ton car like this. Right, let's go and do some more normal driving now, I think. Okay, so now we're heading onto a classic British B road, although it is actually smoother than normal, and that means I'm going to film today in race mode, but normally I'd be in individual mode with everything in race for the sharper throttle response, more weight in the steering, and actually the loudest fake engine sound. I know it's weird, but it actually sounds good, and it sounds like it's from an Arteon, an EA888 engine, unlike in the Mark 7 Golf R that sounded like a Subaru Impreza until it broke, and then it sounded like a broken Subaru Impreza. The only thing that's not raced that I'd have normally is the dampers. In sport they're really well judged, a little bit too soft in comfort, but it's nice to have that option. Shift wise, I'm going to use manual shifting. Now it's not fully manual, it will still change up at the red line, which is a shame you don't get that in Mark 8 Golf R with performance pack. But actually kick down is only right at the bottom of the pedal, so you can still ride the torque, which is actually really quite nice. Now on paper you might think this car is slow, but rest assured it's fast. I've worked out it needs 47 horsepower more to match the power to weight ratio of the Mark 8 Golf R hatch. The way it goes, especially in the mid-range, does not reflect that at all. It's still very, very quick. I thought initially you'd pop this over to Racing Line and get it remapped to get that 47 horsepower that is kind of missing, but there's no need for that. It's super, super rapid. As you can hear, DSG that was super smooth when you were just loafing along now is razor sharp. And we do get pops and bangs as well. I'm not sure how good it sounds outside, but there are definitely pops and bangs and the occasional DSG farts. And there's this cool function on the gearbox. If you hold the left pedal down for a couple of seconds, it drops to the lowest gear, attack mode. And if you get bored of all that and you want to go back to auto shifting, just hold the right pedal down and it'll just go back to auto mode from manual, unless you're in the manual mode on down here, which we are. But this Arteon R has one party trick beyond all that, and it's called torque vectoring. The road's a bit wet now. We're in a car that's 1.8 tons, and you can just attack these corners. As long as you get on the gas, it tightens its line. Normally you'd be like understeering off, especially in these greasy conditions, but my word, it's incredible. And yes, it's a long car and we don't have rear wheel steering or anything like that, but it doesn't feel it. It's just the way it tightens its line with a little smidgen of drive from the rear. It's really, really addictive, and actually I'm glad I got to drive this car in the autumn when the roads are slimy, because you get to feel it a lot more. So guys, I bet you're thinking it sounds really, really great, but there's no way I'm going to pay £60,000 for one of those. Well, let me let you into a little secret. And the answer is simply depreciation. Even though until recently used cars were almost as much as new, and new cars were overlist in some cases, today the Arteon R shooting brake for some reason loses a hell of a lot of its value in its first year. And the cars don't even have to have been driven. There are pre-reg cars at dealers with 170 miles on the clock with Estoril wheels for £44,099. That's like 16 grand, over 16 grand below the list price. The best value I found though was a 2023 car with 4,000 miles, so only just run in, £37,580. And who cares if it's got Adelaide wheels instead of Estorils? At that kind of price you can buy as many Estorils as you want. Now it's interesting to compare these prices with those of the Mark 8 Golf R. Until recently they were fetching over list. If you had a car, there was a shortage of them, but supplies improved a lot. If you look on Auto Trader now though, for a 2023 car with about 4,000 miles, it's actually a little bit more expensive than the Arteon shooting brake at £38,799. Now bearing in mind that car has a list price of about £45,000 and the Arteon is 60. They're both plucked from the air, I think, from Volkswagen, but still on the used market the Arteon R shooting brake is cheaper than a Mark 8 Golf R. Now, I don't know where they got the original £60,000 asking price from. It's actually £15,000 different in price to a Mark 8 Golf R, but when you allow for options, it's still £10,000 more for an Arteon shooting brake, and it's not like you get any more power, and it's not like the carpets are nicer either. You get a few buttons and you get a separate climate panel. The Tiguan R is still £10,000 cheaper than the Arteon shooting brake, and that's a SUV, which is what people want. A lot of you guys might mention Skodas. I don't think this is the rival for the Skoda Octavia VRS because it's bigger, but also it's a much more attractive car both inside and out. Whilst the VRS Octavia now has got a bit of Alcantara here and there, its cabin quality is pretty dreadful in my eyes. It's not even as good as the Mark 8 Golf R. The rival for it in the range, I would say, and it's just being deleted now, is a superb Sportline 280 4x4. Now this car, with the spec equalised as much as possible, is still £51,500. So yeah, it's a good £8,500 cheaper than the Arteon shooting brake. But the big difference is that car is being run out. You can only get them from stock, and there won't be such good deals. I can't imagine you're going to get one for the same price as this. And this car is still available to order. So the factories are still making them, and they keep on coming. And that's actually unlike the Mark 8 Golf R, I think, an estate now, which is only available from stock because we've got the facelifts coming early next year. As for the BMW M340i xDrive Touring, the elephant in the room, this car has an RRP of £60,600, so virtually the same as the Arteon R shooting brake. I haven't checked the spec, but crucially, if you look at them, 2023 cars with about 5,000 miles, they're still very, very close to list price at £55,000. So on the used market, there is no comparison with the M340i. Yes, it's an amazing car, but it's not 18 grand better. As ever, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Volkswizard video. Keep subscribing, keep commenting, and see you for the next one very soon, which could be me taking delivery of my new Arteon R shooting brake.